Well, the Albanese government is tonight in damage control mode. The political fallout from the Qantas upgrade scandal now taking on a life of its own. Albanese hasn't denied personally asking former Qantas Chief Executive Alan Joyce for upgrades. These business class flights are worth tens of thousands of dollars. And then news today that he's been getting these perks since 1999. I spoke about all of this with Joe Aston, the author of The Chairman's Lounge, a little earlier. Joe Aston, thank you so much for your time and congratulations on your book.
Thank you, Sherry.
Certainly making news today, and the Prime Minister, he's under pressure over the revelations over the flight upgrades. He's attacked you personally over this. What's your response to what he's had to say today?
So the Prime Minister complained that apparently I failed to disclose that I was once a Liberal staffer and that I also worked for Qantas. My advice would be perhaps one of the 50 taxpayer-funded staff who work for him could have read the first couple of pages of the book, because it's there that I was a Qantas employee before the contents page, and the fact that I was a Liberal staffer is literally on the first line of the first page of the book.
So he's deflecting?
Well, yeah, he's unfortunately decided to shoot the messenger, and he seems unable to answer the only question that people are interested in hearing.
This is a classic strategy to avoid having to answer questions about the own upgrades and the benefits that he's received over the years. He says he's declared them. So what has he done that's actually wrong here?
Well, I think potentially he hasn't technically done anything wrong if he has disclosed all of his flight upgrades, which he says he has. But that really says something about what's wrong with the rules. You can disclose gifts all you want, but the fact is he was Transport Minister and he was seeking upgrades and accepting upgrades from a national airline that he was actually in charge of regulating. As we learned during the Qatar affair last year, the Transport Minister of Australia has really unique personal discretion over which airlines can fly into Australia and how often they can fly. So for a Transport Minister to be accepting benefits or to be seeking and then accepting benefits from an airline worth tens of thousands of dollars, it's just, I don't see how anyone can say that's acceptable, even if it is disclosed.
I mean, you've made the comparison to a CEO from ANZ or Westpac giving $50,000 into a Prime Minister's or a politician's bank accounts and that person them disclosing it. You know, yeah. It still raises questions.
Oh, totally.
So what do you think of the major decisions? You just referred to Qatar Airlines, but what do you think of the major decisions that Albanese has made over the years that have benefited Qantas?
Well, I would say, certainly last year when Qantas was going off the rails, and as many of us remember, they had the highest prices and the worst customer service in memory, and they were in an absolute brand crisis, which they're still recovering from. And at that time, the Albanese government defunded the ACCC's airline monitoring powers, which only Qantas had sought to have ended. No other parties had wanted to do that. So they basically cut the ACCC off at the knees. And of course, then there's the Qatar decision. Though I would point out that the Albanese government has brought in very, very, I would say almost radical industrial relations changes that do a lot of damage to Qantas's business model. So it hasn't been all one-way traffic.
Aside from the flight upgrades, one of the main revelations from your reporting has been that the Prime Minister requested from Alan Joyce a Chairman's Lounge membership for his son, Nathan. Now, he has said in the past few days that this was just a +1 that replaced Carmel Tebbutt's +1. But in fact, I'm told that, well, Carmel Tebbutt, she was Deputy Premier in New South Wales, that she had a Chairman's Lounge membership in her own right. So it wasn't the case that she was the Prime Minister's +1. Does your reporting back this up?
Yeah, so I wrote this 12 months ago, August 2023, and the Prime Minister was so outraged. He tried to shut the story down. He called my editor-in-chief and has now, has basically put a personal boycott on the AFR, won't speak at any conferences. I mean, it's all a bit...
This is about his son receiving the lounge membership.
Yes, he's so angry about that story being run, and he's never dealt with it. He just has never even confirmed that it's true until this week. I mean, a year later, he finally says, yeah, okay, mate, he does have a Chairman's Lounge membership. But as you say, he's added this new story that he's apparently Albanese's +1. Well, I find that an implausible explanation because Jodie Hayden was disclosed by Albanese in his register of interest in October 2022 as Albanese's +1. So how can his son be his +1? And my understanding is certainly that it was only when Albanese became Prime Minister that he asked Alan Joyce to make his son a Chairman's Lounge member, which is more than 3 years after his marriage to Carmel Tebbutt ended. So I think there's still questions about that, absolutely.
He claims you're targeting his family, that this isn't a matter of public interest. What do you say to that?
I find that pretty tiresome. You sort of get used to it, but I mean, the idea that I am targeting his family, or that it's my fault, or the Financial Review's fault, or the book's fault that his son is being raised in the news, is just completely not taking responsibility for his own actions. His grasping behaviour, asking for benefits for his family while he's in public office, that's what caused his son to be in the news. And again, I think we're seeing more of this. He has this inability to take responsibility for his own actions. He has a real blind spot around what's appropriate.
I think, the political side of it is obviously fascinating, but where it becomes a serious issue is if the politicians aren't properly holding Qantas to account or ensuring proper conduct from our national carrier when it comes to issues like the COVID flight credits. This was an egregious conduct from Qantas. So do you think that the politicians, if they weren't on the take from Qantas, they might have been tougher?
Yeah, and I think, well, setting aside COVID credits, I think for more than 3 decades, governments and politicians of both stripes have been, licking the trough of Qantas for that entire period of time. Now, Qantas is the best user and wielder of soft influence in Australia, and I go into great detail about that in my book. But more recently, the company let the Australian people down. The company wants to be the national carrier, the Spirit of Australia, but it went MIA in COVID, and it used COVID as a super profit, supercharging opportunity to make more money than they've ever made before, and they sold Australians down the river. And I think the Australian government and the opposition, they switch around, as you know, in 2022, but both sides would never have allowed Qantas such an easy run if they weren't also compromised.
Yeah. Just finally, quickly before you go, I mean, some people are missing your columns in the Fin Review, others not so much. But I'm interested in your view about Albanese as a character, because the perception is cementing that he does like a freebie, whether it's the grand final tickets, Taylor Swift tickets, his clifftop mansion, and now the revelations of the 22 flight upgrades at least. What's your view on how he's presented himself as this boy from Housing Commission?
Yeah, it's interesting. In my experience, writing about very powerful people for a long period of time, the ones who bang on the most about their origin story, about how they grew up in a brown paper bag or they floated to Australia on a stick of spaghetti, they're always the ones who are most susceptible to the high life. And I think it's certainly true that for someone who came from so little, Albanese has an insatiable appetite for VIP travel and hospitality.
All right, Jo Aston, thank you very much, and congratulations once again in your book.
Thank you, Sherry.